Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Talmud Yerushalmi on Masechet Sukkah states that there are 3 times Shlosha Mekomot Shebehem Huzharu Yisrael Shelo Lashuv LeMitzrayim. There are 3 times that the Israelites are warned not to return to Egypt following the Exodus where God took them out of Egypt. They should not return. One of those 3 is in our Parsha, Parshat Beshalach, in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13. It's right before the splitting of the sea. Vayomer Moshe el ha'am. Moshe says to the nation, Al tira'u, don't be afraid. Hityatzvu uru'u et Yeshuat Hashem. Stand there and watch the salvation of God. Asher ya'aseh lachem hayom, which God will do for you today. Ki asher re'item et Mitzrayim hayom, as you see Egypt today, lo tosifu lirotam. You will not see Egypt again, od ad olam, ever again. This Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says this verse is one of the 3 times where the Israelites are warned never to return to Egypt. What's interesting, if you look at the language of the verse, is that it does not seem to be a warning against returning to Egypt, but rather a promise that the Israelites will not return to Egypt. So that is one problem that the Torah Temimah, Rav Baruch Epstein, wants to address here. As he says, Va'af al pi de la pashtut halashon, it does seem that according to the plain reading of the text, Ein lashon ze azhara rak haftacha. This language is not a warning, but rather a promise. Tzarich lomar, so this is how we have to understand it. Mid hivtiach kein HaKadosh Baruch Hu, since God promises that the Israelites will not go to Egypt again, Chayavim Yisrael mitzidam lihishtadel b'kiyum haftacha. The Israelites are therefore obligated from their part to try to ensure that the promise is upheld. Umemela muzharim shelo lashuv, and they're sort of therefore ipso facto obligated and warned. This counts as a warning not to go back. It's true, it doesn't seem like a mitzvah, a warning, don't go back, a prohibition, don't go back. It seems like a promise, but because God made the promise, we have to keep, on our end, act to fulfill the promise, and it, in so doing, becomes a prohibition. It's a little bit of, backwards logic, but that's what the Torah Temimah wants to claim, and he further is going to buttress that claim from the following. V'chein mashma mehapasuk de Parshat Shoftim. And it also seems that, remember what Bar Yochai said, is there's 3 times that the Israelites are told not to go back to Egypt. So the second example happens in Deuteronomy, in Parshat Shoftim. And there it says, V'Hashem amar lachem lo tosifun lashuv b'derech hazeh od. So later in the Torah, in Parshat Shoftim, the verse will say, God said to you, don't come back this way again, meaning don't go back to Egypt again. However, lo matzinu amira acheret zulat bezeh pasuk shelefanenu. So again, the verse later in Parshat Shoftim will say, God said to you not to go back this way again. But if we look in the entire Torah up until that part in Deuteronomy, there's no reference to God's ever saying, don't go back this way. The closest we have, says the Torah Temimah, is our verse here in Parshat Beshalach. So it must be that it's supposed to be understood, imkein mevuar diyesh b'chlal lashon pasuk zeh gam azhara, that you must be able to infer from our pasuk, from our verse, this idea that we're not supposed to return to Egypt again. Okay, so that's a very nice idea. And now the Torah Temimah extends it to an interesting halachic idea, a legal ramification, which is also a bit of a pushing the logic a little bit, but it makes for a nice little vort, a nice idea. Hine, Ma shenogea b'inyan ze ledina, and there's also a legal ramification that comes out of this. How so? Da'afal pi d'chtiv lo tosifu lirotam od adolam. Even though our verse says, you will not see them ever again, ubechol zeh ktiv, but nevertheless it is written later in our Parsha, in Parsha Beshalach, V'yari Yisrael et Mitzrayim meit al sfat hayam, that the Israelites saw the Egyptians dying on the shoreline of the Red Sea. So wait a sec, it says the Israelites saw them, but here it says you're not going to see them. So there seems to be a contradiction within our very Parsha. Hainu. So what does this mean? According to Torah Temimah, she'hakavana hayta ala chayim v'lo ala meitim. That this meant that we'd never see them alive again, but not necessarily that we wouldn't see them dead. V'yesh b'zeh nafka mina ladina. This has a practical ramification in the sphere of law. Nishba echad shlo yireh penei ploni. What if a person says, I make a vow never to see a certain person again. I'll never see Ploni ever again. Umeit Ploni, and then Ploni dies. What can you say? Says the Torah Temimah, Mutar lirotok shumeit. You're allowed to see that Ploni once they're dead. You could, help bury them in Israel where people are buried in a shroud. You could do that, or if you had to deal with, if you're in the Chevra Kadisha and you have to deal with the deceased with the mace to help prepare them for burial, you could do such a thing. So it's an interesting nafkamina, an interesting practical ramification, but the Torah Temimah uses it to buttress this general idea that though it's true the verse said we're never going to see them again, there are times when, yes, physically you'll see this person's body again, and that doesn't go against the plain or deep understanding of never to see them again. This is a broad topic, the notion of the prohibition against returning to Egypt, against seeing the Egyptians again. And we know that after this moment, indeed, Jews do go back to Egypt, both in the Tanakh and then post-biblically. There was a robust Jewish community in Egypt for centuries. So it's a discussion for another time. Always a pleasure learning with you. More next week.